All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to we have everyone logging in. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to give everyone, of course, a few minutes to log in, finish up their last meetings, jump on in. So, in the meantime, I'll start with everyone's favorite housekeeping. So, obviously, you've got myself and our two panelists here today. We are the only ones who are going to be on camera and unmuted throughout today's webinar. But all of you guys will have access to both the Q&A function as well as the chat function. The Q&A, we're going to have a dedicated Q&A section at the end of the webinar. So please, please, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section. And then throughout the webinar, we would love some audience participation. So plus ones, tips that you have for combating some of these things, please, we would love to see it all. And while we're giving everyone a few more minutes, go ahead and drop in the chat where you're calling in from, what your role is. We'd love to know who we've got on the phone with us.
Always reminds me of like a old AM FM radio show, right? Like long time listener, first time caller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you saying I have a new job if I'm looking
I
for
think
it?
you do. Yeah, if this doesn't work out for you, Maureen, I think
Okay.
it's a career opportunity.
Awesome. We've got some
So is
folks
that is
on
that
the
how
East
it's
Coast.
gonna work, Maureen? Are you gonna be giving out prizes to us today on today's radio show? Is that it?
Yeah, I'm sure I can scrounge something up.
You guys do
And
such a
then
good job with swag. Oh, I should have brought my ChurnZero flag out. I've got it on that
Aaron.
wall. I've got it right there. Well, if you promise not to judge me, I'll
Oh,
move
no.
the camera. Don't judge me for how dirty it is over there, but there you go. You can
We
see.
are literally taking
Love
people
it.
behind the curtain of today's
Yeah,
operation.
exactly. A little behind the scenes of Aaron Thompson's dirty office. Yeah,
I've got
all
my
of those
fight Trent
pictures,
flag right over here.
all that
That's
stuff is
funny.
eventually it's gonna all end up back there. I'm getting nightmares with this donkey looking over my shoulder every day. I feel like
Dun, dun, dun.
I can't get away from it. Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
Literally your
I've
logo.
had that flag up since Big Rig 2019, I think is when I got it.
I
2020,
love
something
it.
like
An
that.
OG big rigger. That's great.
Yep, repping the brand, exactly.
I love it. All right, we're about 2 minutes in. We've got so much in the chat already. Thank you, everyone. We got people from Mexico, East Coast, Canada, all over. So we've got some CSMs, senior managers, some ops folks. Thank you guys again so much for joining us. Before we dive into things, everyone's favorite question. Is this going to be recorded? The answer is yes, and everyone here today, along with registrants, will receive their recording via email in the coming days. So without further ado, I will go ahead and get us started. So again, thank you everyone for coming to today's webinar, CSM Confidential, what your CSMs need from you to succeed in 2024. So who do we have chatting with us today? I'll go ahead and kick us off. My name is Maureen Rice. I'm the customer marketing manager here at ChurnZero. I have for many, 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 many moons been in a professional services or a customer success role. And so I'm really excited to dig into some of the numbers that we saw in our CSM Confidential report. But then I'll turn it over. Aaron, you want to give yourself a little intro?
Yeah, I love giving myself intros. Yeah, my name is Aaron Thompson. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at a company called SuccessCOACHING. That's our logo. It's a play on a unicorn. I always like to explain that to people so that it can kind of get beyond the donkey and the plunger whole thing. And yeah, we do training and education. We've got accredited certifications in customer success and outcome-based selling. Now we have a customer support specialist certification that just came out this year. So anything and everything post-sale education is where we focus, and excited to be a part of this today and hear from the group and get to hang out with Maureen, yourself, and Lukas. So thanks for the chance to be here.
And
So
last but certainly not least, Lukas, go ahead, bring us home.
yeah, I've been using success coaching for many years. Got several CSMs certified on it, and everyone always brings up and made fun of me along the way, like, oh yeah, the donkey, right? And I'm like, not just the donkey. You guys should take a look at them. So if your teams aren't using success coaching, definitely have a look at them. But I lead customer success here at ChurnZero. I have about a decade experience in customer success, building, scaling CS programs, from regional to global scale. So really excited to be here. Really love talking about, how we can help our CSMs as leaders. and a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So looking forward to our conversation today.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you both for being here with us. So before we dig into the actual data and the things that we found, let's talk about what the survey and the CSM Confidential report even are. So early in 2024, we surveyed close to 300 SaaS CSMs, confidentially, of course. Participants were asked things about their roles, their workload, their team and career goals for themselves, support from their manager, and so much more. So I won't read through all of the little stats we've got here, but keep in mind, a typical survey respondent has been in CS for not that long on a team who hasn't existed at their organization for very long. The vast majority are working remotely and are on pretty small teams. So keep that in mind as we go through some of these numbers today. It may not exactly sound like you, but that's who our group here is. So why we surveyed confidentially. I, again, as a CSM in a past life, I had thoughts about what CSMs were going to say. I think managers have thoughts about how their teams are doing, CSMs, peer-to-peer chit-chat. Sometimes you just need someone to talk to and to vent to, potentially, that isn't your manager, right? So we wanted to give them an outlet to do it. And talking to CSMs directly isn't something that a lot of people are doing. So we're really, really excited to get this off the ground. And this is just the first of many years to come of the CSM Confidential Report. So hang tight. So today we're going to talk, of course, about the data, but we've taken the data from the report and really put it into three kind of problem challenge areas. So today what we're going to talk about is how you as CS team members, CS leaders can make the biggest difference for your team in some of these areas and for your organization. So before we talk challenges, let's talk about the good stuff, because there is good stuff, right? So overall, CSMs like their jobs. They like their managers and their teams, and they like doing customer work, right? Building relationships with customers, educating customers, problem solving, all of that. And really, if you look at the data, only 22-ish% of CSMs actually said they were truly unhappy. So the good news here is you've got good people working for you who want to be there, right? And want to be great at their job and help their customers. Starting off on a high note, let's talk about the not so good news. The truth is, a lot of CSMs are really struggling, whether it's with their daily workload or even holding customers accountable, right? And like I said, we summarized a lot of the different data points. Sorry, I'm banging everything around. We summarized a lot of those different data points into kind of those three problem areas. So we'll talk about ways that we can better support them. And it doesn't just mean spending a ton of money to hire a ton of new CSMs, okay? So problem area number one, CSMs are drowning, right? So let's look at some of the stats from the report that actually brought us to this conclusion. Only 40% of CSMs say their schedule and workload is realistic. 41% say they can't hit their goals without working evenings or weekends. And of, again, the 22% of CSMs who identified as unhappy, 59% are feeling burnt out. That's big numbers. And it's disheartening to see, again, as a CSM. I felt it myself. And I think before we talk into why this is happening, I think we have to address the elephant in the economy, right? So many teams are downsizing. There's a lot of rifts, and those who stayed on took on extra responsibilities or saw their roles changing a little bit. So what I want to do here in this first problem is, Aaron, Lukas, why do we think this is happening? And I think going off of what I just said here, I think a big problem of this is a lack of role definition. And that leads to kind of this reactive culture, people taking on too much. What do you guys think about that? Lukas, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think like the elephant in the room, like you said, Maureen, is the economy. We shouldn't put that one behind us just yet. There's the last couple of years, reduction in force have not only affected CSMs in their roles, but it's also affected their actual workload. So as companies had reduced their headcounts, companies have also had other CSMs leave in anticipation of a reduction in force. So who's left holding the bag is those remaining CSMs, and in a lot of cases a lot of companies out there still can't are not able to backfill those positions just yet. And so, there's a lot happening with those CSMs who still have to, assume their former colleagues' customers, make sure that they're helping them achieve their business objectives, that the customer doesn't feel an impact. And CSMs make a living off of relationships. They make a living off of making customers really happy and satisfied, which leads to renewals and expansions. So a CSM does not want to let a customer go hanging just because they've lost their previous CSM. So CSMs, I feel, especially over the last couple of years, that's probably one of the biggest things that impacted CSMs feeling burnt out is customer success managers that have really been picking up the pieces from an organization's or looking for financial relief.
I would agree with that. The role definition, I think, is really critical. As I've dabbled into the customer experience conferences this year and kind of moved out of the typical customer success conferences, I'm amazed at how few people really understand the difference between customer experience and customer success and customer support and customer service. In fact, coming up this October in Zero In, I just got my topic into Corey for my talk, and it's going to be along these lines. What's the difference between customer success, customer support, and customer service, right? And a lot of organizations just take an account management team and relabel them CSM and say, be the hero, fix the churn problem. Like when I got my first head of CS job, I was hired in to fix the churn problem, and they had a significant churn problem, about 40% year over year when I came in. And I got this job. It was basically fix it, get it under 10% in a year, and we'll give you a bonus. And if you don't, you're going to get let go. And I said, all right, game on. Let me figure this out. And they were astounded to learn that I didn't just operate post-sale. I said, okay, if I'm going to take on this challenge, I need to have insight into our marketing and our branding and our sales funnel and our processes and our product, our roadmap, because you can't fix the churn problem just post-sale. Customer journey starts so much earlier. And so they're already making these observations and these, different sort of like conclusions about your company, your brand, your people, your process, your product, whatever the case may be, way before we get them in the post-sale. And I think to Lori's point here in the chat, even like everything post-sale, every customer success organization starts in the hero mode. Every customer success organization wants to get to operationalized, where you've got these moments of truth identified, the journey mapped out fairly well, maybe not to the nth degree, but you have it operationalized, right? You got your plays and playbooks, and you're taking advantage of these different things, whether they be time-based or event-based plays, and you've got automation with an amazing tool like ChurnZero, and whatever the case may be, right? No, the plugs are just getting started, just getting warmed up. But that's what we want to get to, is that operationalized side. To get there, we've got to go through strategic, and too many times organizations don't actually apply and take the time to apply the strategy. And that comes down to role definition as well, right? Like everything post-sale, like I think many organizations and CSMs feel that way. And that is directly tied to unclear role definition. Customer success should be proactive in strategically working with your top 20%, your most strategic customers, to not just make them happy or satisfied, as Lukas pointed out. I want to kind of push back on that, but to make sure that they're achieving their outcome. That's what it's really all about. Like, I might love you, but if you're not helping me solve a problem, I'm not going to keep paying you. And on the other side, I might hate you, but if you're the only way for me to solve a problem, then I'm going to keep paying you. At the end of the day, it's all about the outcome. And that's what customer success is really about, is did they achieve their outcome? Then when there's competition on how they can achieve that outcome, that's where customer experience comes into play to determine the winners and the losers, right? Taxi cabs and Uber, right? Get a ride from point A to point B, same exact outcome, better experience, decimates the industry. Netflix and Blockbuster, I mean, we could go down the list time and time again. But at the end of the day, that's what customer success should really be about, is this proactive strategic motion in the business that's getting out and anticipating risk, getting out ahead of risk, and providing and making it so stupidly obvious the outcomes that you've achieved. That's what I want to be spending my time on. And we so often end up spending we get, because we don't have an intelligent service model and we're not adhering to it, We get pulled into that squeaky, bad fit customer who takes all of our time because they just yell the loudest. And now we're reacting. And that's a customer support function. That's a customer support motion. Reactive and tactical support, proactive and strategic success. Support's super important. Like, fix the bug as quick as you can, put out the fire, solve the problem, of course. But nowhere in me signing up as a customer did your service level agreement provide value for me. Like, that is not value. You just got yourself back to square one. I don't care how quick you can fix the problem. Don't hurt yourself, patting yourself on the back, because actually I don't care. That's not why I signed up with your products and services. I signed up with those to solve business challenges. Yes, maybe I can't solve those when I have a support problem, but that in itself, that support, reactive, tactical motion is not success for me. It never is, it never will be. Yet CSMs have to spend so much time in that side of the world because out of all good intentions, they want to help customers. That's why I love customer success. When I found it, I was like, I love this. It all makes sense now, this industry, because every job I had was helping customers, but I was getting burned out on that reactive firefighting of the support world. And so when I found success, I was like, oh my God, it all makes sense. Thank you, Lord. Right? Like, I've found my people, I've found my industry. Yet so many organizations actually are just kind of a glorified support or some sort of support on steroids, if you will, and everything post-sale, as who was it? Where is it? Here we go. Lori so eloquently put it. Exactly. Now I'll get off my soapbox, Lucas.
I think to add to that as well, and piggyback off of your point, Aaron, it's I truly think we still, as an industry, we have missed the mark to properly estimate the amount of time it takes for CSMs to be proactive, the amount of time CSMs need to build relationships, right? You can't throw a tool at that, right? You can throw some tools to help make it easier for you to do that, but you can't throw a tool at like the relationship building, right, that a CSM has to do. And it's not with just a customer, it's with the several different roles that, you know, your customers may have, right? You're going to want to build a relationship with your main point of contact, but you'll also want to build, you know, relationship with your decision makers as well. And sometimes those are separate conversations. So I think we're not hitting the mark on properly estimating the amount of time and effort it takes to really go into relationship building. And, you know, in my mind, relationships is revenue, right? Like, it gets, you know, a big factor to retaining your customers, the type of relationship you have, how easy you can call on a relationship to help make a situation right. And I also think CSM's roles have just generally changed over the past several years. We have the privilege of speaking, you know, with CSMs almost on a daily basis here at ChurnZero, and you know, a lot of technical CSMs are now like assuming commercial responsibilities that used to potentially be in the domain of like an account manager or, you know, other different revenue focused roles in an organization. So yeah, like CSMs may be getting paid more, but that doesn't help, you know, them really cram the extra, you know, those extra responsibilities into a 40-hour work week. So properly, I think the big takeaway here as leaders is let's properly estimate the amount of time it takes for CSMs to be doing the things we want them to do and the things that are truly impacting revenue, such as being proactive and being relationship driven.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that. And that's, oh, go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was just gonna say that's where the logo actually comes from. Is like all these CS organizations want this magical unicorn that knows the product and the domain and the people and is technical, yet can build the relationships and have the human side as well, and have the, you know, go deliver a killer business review to the executive, while all the way down to working with the system admin on the configuration of it, right? Like, they want everything. And that's literally like kind of where our logo comes from, is just that misaligned or unrealistic expectation or hope that so many leaders have of finding that perfect unicorn who knows everything, people, process, product, you name it. They can nail it all. So anyway, what were you going to say, Maureen? Sorry, I jumped in.
I love that. That was a great little addition. But I think it's Lucas's point is a good segue into what can leaders actually do. So some of the things we've talked about here, role definition. Lucas, I know you're very passionate about capacity planning as a whole too. And I think that's one that a lot of people struggle with, right? And it's we had talked leading up to this presentation that a lot of leaders are looking at customer segmentation over here and capacity planning over here. But in reality, those two need to be very closely related. So Lukas, can you talk a little bit about that? I love that point.
Yeah, those two definitely, in my mind, really need to be closely related, because you don't have one without the other, right? So at the end of the day, in my mind, like we see so many CS organizations sometimes even, you know, overcomplicating capacity, or still looking at things like, you know, just the number of estimating the CSM's capacity as the number of accounts that they could manage. While we should be using that as a benchmark, CS leaders, like that should definitely be something that we look at and we track, and we look at this over time to measure how efficient or not we're getting as an organization. But there's only 40 hours, you know, in a work week, right? At the end of the day, there's 40 hours in a work week. How can we break down that 40 hours, scale it back from there, and start paying attention to things like, okay, how much time does, you know, my CSM need to be proactive in a day? What does being proactive even mean for my organization? And really, what part of their day do we want to give them to devote to that, right? How many customer meetings, like at what clip do my CSMs need to be meeting with my customers, and what are they talking about? So you know, and on the topic of customer meetings, it's not just the 45 or 60-minute meeting. There is prep that needs to go into that meeting to make that meeting effective. To your point, Aaron, like articulating success in a really obvious way to our customers, like it's truly an art. Like there's that needs to be done in a really creative way to help speak to our customers, and not all of our customers are speaking the exact same language. So really, how does a CSM tailor that message? So there's time that needs to go into planning for things like meetings. There's follow-up that comes after the meeting to be a really good CSM, right? You close the loop after that meeting. This is, you know, basics of being a, you know, customer service, working in customer service generally. So really taking a 40-hour work week, working backwards from there. And then comes the topic of segmentation. Within each one of my segments within an organization, right? How many, like, you know, in my highest touch segment, like how many meetings do I want my CSMs having with those customers? How many meetings do those customers need to be successful, among other, you know, touch points or activities by the CSM, not only meetings. It's fully recognized that meetings is not the only high value engagement out there. So that's sort of how I see it, how I see the two being related. But let's work back from a 40-hour work week and be realistic and strategic about the time, carve out the proportion of time for each CSM.
And one of the things I think is challenging, like a lot of people want to do capacity planning, want to do segmentation, like, oh, you know, these people get 2 calls a quarter, whatever. I think then, especially if you're rolling back what is currently very high touch to, hey, you get 2 calls a quarter, leaders have to be preparing their teams to have those conversations with customers, right? Because again, CSM is going to go out of their way to work on a weekend and take an 8 p.m. call in just to get all of this done because the customer needs it. So leaders, if you are going to be doing these things and putting these more rigid structures in place, which of course can have kind of one-offs here and there, you have to be preparing your team for that and to have those conversations with our customers.
Yeah, I think like when I came in at Fort, I don't want to mention the company that had that churn problem, but my first head of customer success role, well, first of all, I love telling this story, right? I get that job to fix the churn problem. I come in on day one, I pull out my laptop and I go to Google, now that I'm the head of customer success, and I type in, what is customer success? So if anybody out there doesn't feel like they necessarily knew what the industry was before you got into it, you're not alone. Like everybody found this industry somehow, some way. And I found the technology platforms like ChurnZero and the conferences like Zero In and the communities, and I started studying it and reading it. And the first thing I did was segmentation, because I couldn't make heads or tails of our customers. I don't know who the most important down to the least important was. And I was like, well, I'm going to draw a bell curve on the whiteboard. I'm just going to put a thumb in the air and I'm going to do a bell curve and say 20% are going to be in my tier 1, high touch, platinum, whatever I want to call it. 20% are going to be down here in that tech touch tier 3, silver, whatever, and then that'll leave 60% there in the middle. I'll manage these myself as a player coach. I'll have my team manage these across pooled resources. And these, I'm going to send them an email and say, I'm sorry, you can no longer call us. Every one of our customers, we had 275 on the books. We'd onboarded about 2,700 to date over the 6 years that this company was around. 40% churn rate. We lost a lot of them. Every one of them had this one woman's phone number and email address. Every day they would call her or email her, and it didn't matter if, and we were month-to-month contracts, and they paid, we had some contracts from go to market early that paid us tens of dollars a month. Tens. I mean, imagine. And so anytime those customers called and she answered the phone, we lost money on that customer because it took time out of her schedule, right? It cost us more to have that phone call than they paid us for the entire month, literally. So I got to email them and say, I'm sorry, you don't get to, you can email support at, here's our knowledge base. Granted, I had to set up a tech stack and create places for the customers to go do this self-service, unless you want to buy this, and here's how much it costs, or this, and here's how much it costs. And the reason that was so critical to us righting the ship there was because 80% of the revenue comes from this 20% of customers. Gartner's 80-20 revenue rule. Like, you can Google it. This isn't me making stuff up, but that's where I want to be proactive and strategically working. If I'm going to have the biggest impact on revenue, which ultimately is our biggest challenge in customer success, tying what we do directly to top and bottom line revenue. That's the biggest challenge we have in CS and CX for that matter. Well, if we want to be able to do that, we need to spend as much time as possible up here working again in that proactive strategic motion. So if I'm a CSM, I should do segmentation. I may treat them all the same because my boss says they're all treated the same, whatever. But if I get 2 support tickets, how do I know which one to address first? If the phone rings, I get 2 text messages, whatever, 2 Slack messages at the same time. How do I know which one to address first? Which one is more important? Well, segmentation should show me that. And I'm going to segment according to revenue, right? Whoever pays us the most money, I can put them in the higher touch. Vertical or geo, right? If I'm breaking into a new vertical or a new geography, I might put them in a higher touch than the revenue would necessitate, but that's on purpose. That's okay. That's an intelligent service model. Logo, big sexy logo. Portland, Oregon, where I live, right? You get Nike. Nike is notoriously cheap. They will not pay you very much money, but it's Nike. You make them successful, and now you can expand all around the world and do all these things. And so Nike typically gets high touch, even if they don't pay high touch money. And then the one that I like the most is ideal customer profile, meaning this one actually works the opposite way, meaning the better fit my customer is in terms of the outcome that they're looking to achieve, the lower touch they should need, the more self-sufficient they're going to be. And those are perfect, right? If I can get high touch money, but they only need low touch or tech touch service or support or success, whatever you call it, then that's a win-win, right? And what we end up doing is adding friction to the CX side of the formula when all we're trying to really do is demonstrate the CO, make sure they're getting their COs and they know they're getting their outcomes. And by implementing things like QBRs, I wrote an article a couple years ago called QBRs are stupid. And it made this big splash on LinkedIn. But they're stupid. It's just dumb to do it quarterly. My life isn't completely consistent, nor is yours, Lukas, nor is yours, Maureen. I've got times where I'm busy as all get out. Or let's say I live in the Midwest, like Minneapolis, for example, land of 1,000 lakes. Good luck getting me on a QBR in the summertime. I want to be on my boat. I got 9 months of miserable weather. You're going to try to drag me into a 60, 90-minute meeting telling me how great you are? Forget it. No chance. And so that's one reason why they're stupid. I've got others. You can go to redslacks.com. I'll put it in the chat and read about it if you're curious. It's only like a 5-minute article. But I immediately got podcast requests and stuff because people were like, what do you mean they're stupid? We've been doing it forever. Like, they must be smart, right? No, just because we're doing it doesn't make it smart.
Correct.
What we're trying to do is demonstrate the COs we've been delivering. We add friction to the CX, and we actually degrade the overall volume of success for that customer. Okay, now I'm off that.
Aaron, you're cracking me up. Yeah, in case you missed it, he also he pulled his soapbox back out as he drug the whiteboard, and then it cracked me up, waited for the moment to like really spin it around and like have that effect. I was like, oh, creating a splash.
I might be slightly passionate about this stuff.
So I wonder, Aaron, like what it must take to get a Canadian on a QBR. Like
Oh yeah,
in
good
the
luck, right?
winter
In the
when
summertime,
we're like knee deep in snow.
100%. You got to be kidding me. I'm not going to meet with you. And you know what's amazing is we can take so many signals from social media, direct to consumer, retail. They do such good customer success stuff at massive scale. Yet in the B2B world, we don't learn anything from them. For example, every Spotify member or Apple Music now member receives an annual business review. You don't have a CSM at Spotify, yet they demonstrate the value you got last year through the Wrapped campaign. Wrapped 2023. Show me all of the volume of music that I listen to and the different times of day and genres and all of that. That is to demonstrate the value you've been delivering, which that's ultimately all we need to do. We're going to define, deliver, and demonstrate. That's all customer success is. That's it. Define what success is in terms of that formula, make sure I get it, and then make sure I know I got it. That's all you got to do. You can make sure I know I got it through reports, benchmarking data, a thing like a Wrapped campaign, especially during the summertime when nobody wants to sit in on a QBR. And so that's just one additional reason why I wrote that article. And I genuinely feel like QBRs are just dumb. They're just dumb to do because all we're trying to do is demonstrate the value they've been receiving. In other words, the outcomes. And we actually add friction to that CX side of the formula. And it's just because somebody somewhere, years ago picked it. That's it. And so these poor CSMs have too much to do, not enough time to do it. They got leaders who are just following the herd. They don't even, like most leaders don't even break down their organization this simply, the chicken brain, got to make things easy, right? That's all I got. And so anyway, long story short, it's all out of the goodness of their heart. All these CSMs are doing everything they can to try to be the hero while still checking all the boxes that their boss says they need to check. Meanwhile, the boss never takes a step back and actually does capacity planning, which, by the way, we have a capacity planning model in our level 3 certification. If anybody would like to go to successcoaching.co and check it out, sign up for level 3, and we'll give you a tool to help you as a CSM or you as a leader do capacity planning. All right, now I'm done.
Okay, and I'm looking at the time and I'm like, oh my goodness, we just spent 20 minutes on that topic. The last thing I will say on this, because I think you had said it here, like, somebody gets a Slack message or a text message or a call. I think having that level of access to your CSM needs to stop. That builds this kind of like impression that I can be reached at all times. Nope, my cell phone is my own, thank you. And all of those things are things that we as humans feel need to get back to quickly, right? If someone doesn't immediately respond to my text or my Slack, I'm like, customers shouldn't have, right? If you need a quicker response, go to support. Like, I think that kind of stuff enhances that like reactive firefighting, like, oh my God, I can't get away feeling.
Customers are like water going down the side of a mountain. They're going to find the path of least resistance.
Yep,
if we do not want to be the support people, we cannot be the path of least resistance. Support needs to be the path of least resistance. And we need to train them that way. And sometimes we have to teach customers the right place to go for the right thing. But again, it comes back down to role definition, right? Like it's all about like, I am not support. And that's the thing, I've been saying this about the industry ever since I found it. The thing I hate the most, as much as I love this industry and the people in it, I hate the name. I absolutely hate that it's called customer success because it sounds too much like customer support, customer service. Everybody thinks they know what it is just based on the name. When advertising was invented, they came up with a new name. They didn't call it sales or salesy or something. We would have all thought we knew what it was. Think back to Mad Men and all that back in in the 50s when that was all new, right? Marketing and advertising was new. They came up with new names. We should have come up with a better name. That's the biggest thing. I can't stand it. Anyway, okay. Problem number 2.
Perfect segue. There is a disconnect between what we're asking CSMs to do and what they feel prepared to do. So especially as we're, downsizing teams, like, hey, let's bring dollars in different places, whatever it may be, right? So looking at some of the stats that brought us to this conclusion, we asked survey participants to rank the additional training they feel would make them more effective in the roles we're asking them to do today, right? You'll see the vast majority feel confident in their soft skills, the things that we know CSMs are good in, right? They're good at product and industry knowledge, productivity skills, but CSMs feel they need a lot more training on more of the like operations, analytical, and commercial, the kind of forecasting and renewals and all of that, and selling. They need help on that side of it. And another stat, talking negotiating and selling in particular, only 26% of CSMs that respond to the survey obviously enjoy selling and negotiation. And so that opens up this huge can of worms. I'm like, who owns revenue dollars? Aaron, I think you may have said it earlier. It's like, we have to be tying customer success efforts to revenue. Have to. That is the only thing to keep your team and your budgets and your technology on a strong foundation, right? But why are teams so quick to yank dollars out of CSMs, right? It's like, oh, well, sales, they're just better at it. They're not leaving dollars on the table. It's like, well, hold on. Is that actually the best way to do it? Or is it simply that you haven't trained your CSMs to do it? Right. So I think that's something that really stuck out to me, because a lot of CS leaders are just like, oh, my CSMs aren't good. And it's like, well, hold on. Everyone can be trained. Right. So I think that's a big one. And then another stat too, and then we can talk about why we think it's happening. We asked them, do you feel that your manager and your company provide you with the support tools and training you need to accomplish their goals? While the majority at least somewhat agree, there's definitely still room for improvement. So talking the previous stat and talking this one, why do we feel like this is happening?
Yeah, I think specifically, and Jared Orr in our, Jared Orr posted a blog article. We collaborated with us on a blog article and really said that, we need to teach CSMs to equip them to sell. And I also think that like there's way too much focus on selling, right? If we do the relationship, we do the technical recommendations, becoming your trusted advisors for our customers, the selling piece becomes easy, right? So I think the more we focus on it, I think we focus way too much on the sales skills. Yes, there are foundational sales skills out there that CSMs need. It's becoming more and more prominent in our roles. But really, coming off of like focusing on relationship, coming off of being your customer's trusted advisor, the selling should be easy if we're really proving value, and our customers really take what we say to heart, as CSMs, and can really trust our guidance. The selling piece becomes easy. Yes, there's contracting, there's negotiation skills that are required in there, but I truly believe that sales should be much easier than it is today if we really focus on how we, how we become our customers' trusted advisors in the first place. But then second thing I did want to add is we need to, as CS leaders, we really need to work backwards from churn, work backwards from your close lost upsell, your close lost renewals, and really try and understand like where we missed the mark as a team. What could we have done better? And then gear your training efforts, in those areas. So, for example, maybe a company is going through a lot more churn because CFOs are getting more and more involved in contract renewals, who are not necessarily involved in the day-to-day, see the day-to-day value. So maybe your CSMs need to get more training on how to sell and renew in front of finance organizations, where in the past, like maybe they've dealt with other departments within the organization before. So those are some of the things that I that are top of mind for me right now, but where I believe we could be doing a much better job as leaders, is working backwards from the problem.
Yeah, I think another one too. Sorry, Aaron. I went back to some of the training that people feel they need. Obviously, kind of that commercial skills one is a big one. Business skills, metrics, business strategy. Even above that, outcome tracking. Being able to demonstrate, using your triple Ds here, demonstrate the value. I think so many CSMs are struggling to take all of this data we've got in our customer, how they're using it, supporting whatever, and actually show that outcome tracking or understand what the heck their exec sponsor at their customer, what business strategy and whatever it may be that they need to be proving. And so I thought that one was interesting too, that we're not doing enough of that. Like success plans is on everyone's mind right now. And like, it's still such a struggle. I think that's so interesting.
If anybody's looking for a free success plans canvas, go to successcoaching.co under resources, download it. It's free. We've got a user manual there. It's also part of our level 1 certification. But when you do that effectively, and where it should begin, by the way, is pre-sale. You should start the success planning conversation up in the eval stage. So you got marketing up here, sales, and then you got CS down here, everything post-sale. And it should transition with them. Whether that's the CSM doing it or the account executive doing it, someone needs to be outlining for that executive stakeholder, what are those business objectives they're looking to achieve, right? That's what it's all about at the end of the day. That's what we're gonna have to prove in order to make renewal that natural byproduct of their life cycle. But unfortunately, we don't track, it's not just revenue. We hear GRR and NRR all the time. Those are great, but as a CRO, who sells into the customer success industry, I'm always thinking about customer success and its impact on revenue. Like that's just where my brain works. And I, again, on Red Slacks, there's an article that's called Drop CAC Measure RAC. And the concept of, instead of customer acquisition cost, revenue acquisition cost, because within each customer account, you have 5 revenue streams. And we need to be tracking each of these individually because they all have different overhead to our business. You've got the net new revenue. First time they sign up, they decide to become a customer. Boom, there you go. That's net new. Most expensive acquisition cost you'll have across the 5, right? You've got MQLs and SQLs, and you spend typically about 40% of your available capital up here because it's such a one-to-many game. Playing the marketing, outbound, inbound, blog posts, billboards, phone calls, you name it, whatever. So that's the most expensive. There's your first revenue stream. Your next one is renewal. That's the least expensive. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to train anybody. All the configuration is completed from the original go live. You're just repaying for the same stuff. Beautiful. That's the best revenue, right? The least expensive. Then you've got upsell, where they're going to pay more or buy more of the same thing. So there's your third revenue stream. Then you've got cross-sell. This pen's kind of dying, so bear with me, but cross-sell, that's where I'm buying other things, right? And maybe it complements the first thing, maybe it doesn't, but there's your fourth revenue stream. And then your last one is that advocate referral revenue. So when I make your life better, you say, you know what? The funny looking logo guy, what he said with the whiteboard makes sense. You should go check out Success Coaching. You've now become my advocate. Who you talked to, I didn't have to market to. That's a referral lead. It comes in the side of the funnel, and faster deal times, higher conversion rates. Everybody wins, and it's 1/13 the customer acquisition cost of the top of the funnel. This is what we need to be generating in customer success. We need to be able to effectively track back to all 5 of those revenue streams, and we should get some variable compensation when we don't just renew, but we upsell, cross-sell, and then the holy grail, generate advocates out of our customers. That's where customer-driven growth comes from. That's what it looks like on a whiteboard to do that. And so many CS leaders do not track that. When I was at Big Rig, now called Zero In, last year, I did a talk on that. Happy to share the slides with anybody who'd like to see it. I went through, as a CRO, how I track all 5 of these in our business at Success Coaching. Spoiler alert, 30% of our revenue comes from up here down, 70% is generated from here and through the side funnel, because we don't have a big global brand, right? We've got a funny looking logo, but we've got some kick-ass education and training options for teams and leaders. And so we have to generate everything from our customer asset outwards. And selling into customer success, I'm very proud to say that we do. The vast majority of our revenue comes from those channels.
I love that. Okay, so let's talk about this problem area in particular. Again, there's a disconnect between what we're asking CSMs to do and what they feel prepared and confident to do. So what are some quick takeaways here? What can leaders do to be solving this and better supporting their teams in this area?
I've always been a really big fan of competency matrices. So like really as a leader, if you have, 2 or 3 different types of levels in your organization for your CSM, so you have a CSM level 1, level 2, and then maybe a senior CSM, really helping them around, what they need to do, establishing the specific competencies that matter most to them. There's no smoking gun. I think every company is different. And so as leaders, I think we really should be building competency models for our CSMs, for skills that are going to make them successful within the organization that they're at. Things that are in there should be like, how well does a CSM articulate value, or how well does a CSM, how accurate are they on their forecasting capabilities, and then you set sort of benchmarks around, like a CSM level 1 should generally have roughly, should never be more than like off by 10% from their forecast, or and then as you move up the chain in seniority, sort of that gets smaller and smaller. So building sort of those competency models, getting that in front of their CSM, working with them to track their performance against the competency model quarter over quarter, and then within each one of the competencies that matter most to your organization. And then in there, that's where you sort of build out the right enablement for your CSMs, the right training programs, and this goes back to the right onboarding program from when that CSM starts, to the right everboarding program for how do we keep refreshing, the customer success manager's skills for each one of those competencies. So really being able to plot it out in sort of a competency model, and going back to that competency model. All of the CSMs that I speak to, honestly, whether it's our own, our customers, or previous CSMs that I've worked with in my career, they all want to know what they need to do to get to the next level, because that means career advancement. That also means more money for them, right? So they really want that transparency. They want to know what they need to do. And when they know, the next question is, well, what are the tools? What's the education I'm going to get? And then that's how, as leaders, we can be, through that transparency, through that clarity, support them in covering off the white space on the skills they need to be successful.
I love that. And when you bring up everboarding, I think this is really important too, because I think we've all been in teams, roles, customer success or not, where you can feel it top down. It's not in the culture to be learning new things and being trained on new things. And it's like, well, instead of just teaching them, let's move it to someone else who we don't need to teach, right? And so I think top down, what leaders can be doing is really building this culture of everboarding, continually training people. Like another one of the stats from the study was 30% of CSMs said they didn't feel challenged, or like they're feeling like they're learning anything new, right? So again, people are starved for this, right? The concept of just waking up doing the same thing day after day, like it gets old after a while, and that also contributes to that feeling of burnout too. So I think that's really important.
Speaking of competency models, I dropped a link to ours. We did a 10-year research-based project and broke down junior, senior, and CS leadership into 18 skills and 5 core competencies. It's in that link there. You can also find it at Success Coaching under the resources. We've got tons of free stuff under the resources dropdown. That's one of them. And then I also put my slides from Big Rig that I talked about with the rack, because somebody was asking for those also. So that's in there as well. But 100%, right? Like, I don't know any other industry that does as little to invest in the people's skill set from a training and enablement perspective. Like marketing, tons of training. Sales, always doing new sales training, always trying to figure out new strategies for ways to move the deals through the pipeline. And yet, for some reason, post-sales, we just kind of get lost in that mix. And, obviously, I'm a bit jaded, being we are a training team or a training organization specific to post-sale. And so I feel like there's not enough investment there, of course. But I think of my own career, 20 plus years in support and service and, customer facing roles. I didn't get hardly any training until I moved into other parts of the organization, maybe like how to take a phone call and how to document a phone call and how to use your products and whatever the case may be, but not actual customer success in this case. training. And so anyway, yeah, so there's all that stuff. Might help you, right? We're not saying it's gospel, but take a look at that competency model and see how it relates to your own staff, your own team. And ideally, you find gaps. You're looking at, are they renewing at a good clip but not expanding? Well, then maybe we need some outcome aligned sales training. Are they covering up their renewal numbers because they are so good at expanding? Well, maybe we're not demonstrating the right kind of value to our customers, and we're not renewing at the right clip that we need to be. Wherever the numbers fall, that should show you, based on the competencies or lack thereof, where training and then investing in the people will make the biggest impact.
Yeah, I love that. And to Aaron's point, like, you don't need to bring in someone and pay $5,000 to train different parts of your team. There's so much training out on the internet today. My only caveat to that is make sure you as a leader actually watch it and make sure that everything is applicable. I have seen people get burned by that. It's like, well, hold on. That's actually not what we were trying to tell them. Okay. Problem number 3, and we will keep this quick so that you guys can get out on time. There was an operational gap in CS leadership. So what do we mean by this? The CSMs were far more likely to note that their managers were great at the soft skill stuff, right? Giving me time when I need them, supporting them difficult customer conversations, advocating for the team. However, less than half of the managers are good at the operational stuff, the longer term aspects of leading a results driven CS team, setting goals and expectations, helping team prioritize work, coaching and mentoring the team, all supporting professional development, all of that stuff, right? So I think it kind of segues off of that. And one of the things that we had talked about before this, and I'll jump right into what can leaders do. I think the problem that we see, CS is so new as an industry, and oftentimes people getting promoted into mid-level management and customer success, that's their first time having a management position, right? And so they bring a lot of that operational gap with them because there is no, oftentimes what's happening is, oh, I'm doing CSM work today, and then on Monday morning, I start being a leader, right? And so there's this, hold on, wait, I don't know how to do that, right? And the CSMs are still seeing you as a peer. So Lukas, Aaron, what are some ways that people can be better preparing CS leaders to be better at this kind of analytical operation side of the team in addition to supporting the team?
Yeah. I don't want to harp on a point, recycle the same point, but you need a competency if you're going to invest in your people. It's not just a competency, model for your CSMs. It's how do those CSMs grow into a leadership role if that's the career path they want as well. But yeah, I remember when I became a manager for the first time, having been a CSM in a previous company. It was really tough for me. I still had a book of business. I still had, customers that I was sort of waiting for the right moment to transition. I was also at the time, this was maybe 10 years ago now, maybe a little less, but roughly definitely more than 5 years ago at this point. But we had customer success was still evolving. There was still a lot of that support reactive influence in customer success. And so I was doing a lot of that even as a manager. And at a certain point, I started seeing how that reactive mindset was sort of cascading down to my direct reports, my CSMs. So if there's one thing I would say to leaders on this call is pay attention. One, develop your CSMs, develop your people who want to and aspire to become people leaders. Use things like competency models there as well, but pay close attention to your first-time managers, especially first-time managers now managing people who did their previous role. And make sure that those, they're losing their book of business as quickly as possible, and that they are not taking too much on themselves, because that's a horrible example for the team.
Yeah, and I think it's important to keep in mind that just because you're a great individual contributor at that role doesn't make you a great manager. It's a different skill set. And so the first time I got promoted up to be a manager of a team, they invested in that skill set. I was really good as a technical account manager, and they promoted me up to lead a team of technical account managers, which I think is great. Promotion from within. I think it's important to have carried a bag and done the job at that company before you lead a team of people. but you also have to, and luckily for me, they actually invested in a course at managertools.com. Another plug. They got online stuff. We did an in-person training. It was like a week long. And I walked out of there actually understanding what it means to be a leader, be a manager, not just how to be a great technical account manager, which was the IC role that I was leading at that point.
100%.
Yeah, Aaron is all full of the plugs today. We're waiting for you to post the Amazon link to your whiteboard.
100%.
Buckle up. The question just came in the chat, which I really, really love. How do you navigate a player coach model? Any tips?
Yeah.
I've got thoughts, but I'll leave it to, yeah, go for it, Lucas.
Yeah, from really there's so many tools out there, but you know, I think that from a player coach model, sometimes one of the things I learned early on as a leader, sometimes as a coach, you have to let the player fail for them to learn. And so I think it's part of it is creating a you know, a safe space for failure. Obviously, like a controlled space for failure. You don't want people just being like, they can fail anytime they want and it's okay, and company tanks. But yeah, creating a safe space for failure, and it's tough to do as a coach, but sometimes you have to watch someone fail for, you know, to actually to really drive the learning to the full, you know, home to the fullest. So that's probably one of the things that I learned as a younger manager several years ago now.
And I gave a shameless plug to our own manager. We've got a management essentials class. I should have mentioned that instead of manager tools. If anybody wants to take that, it starts in September. So anyway, but yeah, I think, you know, I've got nothing to add to what Lucas said there.
Yeah, I love that. And a lot of +1s in the chat as well, like just setting the tone that, listen, failure is okay, but making sure that we're supporting these people, even getting up to that point. I love, Lucas, your point, just like make sure you are taking special care of the first time managers. Make sure you are making sure they're doing that training, supporting them where they need it and getting them off of their customers. And again, the quote that you see on the screen here is actually a quote that we received from the CSM Confidential survey. Focus on your purpose of supporting your team instead of working operatively with customers yourself. And so I think that does a good job of explaining where some of these, you know, early CS managers are struggling, right? You need to focus on being more of the manager and not stepping back into your CSM role. I love that. Okay. As you all on the phone can tell, we could talk about this all day, but we've all got lives to live and jobs to do. So I will cut us off there. Please, please, please get in touch with Lucas and Aaron on LinkedIn. Aaron has already beat me to posting his LinkedIn information in there, but it'll all be in the follow-up, and I'll include some of the resources that Aaron shared as well in the follow-up email to you guys all following this. Like I said, the recording and that email will come over the next few days. But shameless plug of my own, there will be a survey after this webinar. We would very much appreciate, it's 4 questions, it's very quick. We would very much appreciate you taking that. Let us know how we did, how we can better structure these webinars moving forward. If you liked the content, all of that, and then some, that would really, really, really helpful for us. But with that, I will say, Lucas, Aaron, thank you so much for joining me on this. It's been a fun one. Everyone on the phone, in the room, thank you all for your time. I know everyone is really busy, as we talked about today, so we appreciate you spending an hour with us this afternoon. Do you guys have any last parting words for the group here?
Get a whiteboard. Get a whiteboard like Aaron.
Aaron dropped the link.
I have to see stuff. I can't remember stuff. See, this is my cheat sheet. Yeah. No, but seriously, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I did put my LinkedIn there. I'm happy to share slides, help anyone. My mission in life is to help people be successful in this industry called customer success. So thank you for the opportunity and putting me on a stage here to ChurnZero, and can't wait to see everybody in DC for Zero in October.
And that's the plug we'll end on.
Love it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day.